UCAR, Peter Christensen here, coming to you from the CEO's desk. We're going to jump right into the REPC, the revised, then revised again REPC. So this is the, I hope it's the latest version, December 4th of 2024, so not very long ago. So if you remember, if you were paying attention, Section 4.3 of the REPC underwent a revision last year. Specifically, we got this Section E that of 4.3E that talks about real estate brokerage compensation. So it's the section where you get to a buyer can ask a seller to pitch in some contribution towards their buyer's agent's commission. Okay, and it had check boxes for a minute, and then the check boxes are gone. So okay, here's what we've got. It says seller and buyer agree that the seller shall contribute blank % of the purchase price to buyer's brokerage or blank dollar amount to buyer's brokerage, if applicable. Okay, right there we have a key word, and that is or. So it's in multiple contracts we use where you can designate a percentage or a dollar amount. Now, in the listing agreement, you can do it's an and, right? And so you could put a combo of both. But in a contract where you have an or, it's one or the other. And so recently heard about somebody filling out a percentage and then put something in the dollar amount. And that becomes very problematic. Because what's the intent of the parties? The intent, was it that the seller got to choose? The buyer gets to choose the percentage or the dollar amount? I'm guessing the seller's going to take whichever's cheaper. So and that's really not what is intended with this form, with that change in this form. And so clearly it's an error by whoever filled it in. But what it does is it creates an ambiguity. Now, the intent may be clear. Let's say it's, 10% and $0, and someone feels uncomfortable having a blank there. Don't do that. Don't put 0 in there. Why? Because then the question could come up through the plain language of the contract. So are we choosing between 10% commission or $0 commission? Because if I'm the seller, I'm choosing 0. But and it's probably pretty clear, like that's not what the parties intended. They wanted to go with percentage, but they didn't feel comfortable leaving a blank, so they put a 0 in there. Better off to have a blank there than a 0. So I suppose someone could put an NA, not applicable, in the second blank. I'd just leave it blank personally. That's what I would do. But be aware that that's what the or means. It's one or the other. When you put both in there, it creates an ambiguity and something you don't want to deal with later on in the transaction. Remember, this is not legal advice. This is legal information only. If you need specific legal advice, please contact your attorney. Thanks for tuning in.